In a world where love and trust often blur into obsession and control, Beyond the Gates dives deep into the fragile psychology of human relationships, exploring how secrets, guilt, and betrayal can turn affection into a weapon. This narrative focuses on Samantha, a woman whose discovery of Nathan's horrifying secret forces her into a desperate escape and an emotional reckoning with the darkness that binds them. What begins as a love story slowly mutates into a haunting reflection of manipulation, anger, and survival. Through Samantha's journey, the story unravels the terrifying truth that sometimes the person we love most is the one capable of destroying us completely. Samantha moved through the night like a fragment of fear itself, swallowed by the mist that hung heavy over the city's edge. Her hands trembled as she gripped the keys, the metal cold enough to bite into her skin. She didn't remember starting the car. She didn't remember how long she had been driving. Every light that passed through the windshield flickered across her face, revealing a war that had already begun inside her long before she opened that hidden door in Nathan's study. She had believed in him, not just as a lover, but as the one person who saw her when no one else did. Nathan had built his life around charm and certainty, a kind of quiet control that drew people in. Samantha had mistaken that control for safety. Now, as the night unfolded like an endless wound, she realized how blind she had been. The evidence was undeniable: photographs, newspaper clippings, a locked cabinet filled with small tokens, rings, watches, fragments of lives stolen and hidden. And her picture, placed neatly among them, as if she were the next chapter in a story he had been writing all along. The sound of rain began to tap against the windshield, rhythmic, almost soothing if it weren't for the pulse hammering beneath her ribs. She wanted to scream, to let the storm carry her voice somewhere no one could ever find it. But the part of her that was still alive knew better. Nathan would notice her absence. He would follow. He always did. He knew how she thought, how she ran, how she feared. That was what terrified her most, not just that he had deceived her, but that he understood her so completely. She reached the outskirts of town, an abandoned service station half swallowed by weeds and rust. There, she stopped. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hiss of the cooling engine. She sat still, breathing, trying to piece herself back together. Every image replayed in her mind: Nathan's careful handwriting, the files with coded initials, the dark stains on the basement floor she hadn't dared to touch. Somewhere deep inside, fury began to stir, not just at him, but at herself. For trusting. For ignoring the signs. For wanting to believe in something pure in a world that had already warned her how cruel people could be. Behind that anger, something darker waited. A question she couldn't silence. What if part of her had always known? What if she had fallen for him because she recognized the darkness in him, because it mirrored something she refused to see in herself? That thought lodged in her chest like a splinter, impossible to remove. Meanwhile, miles away, Nathan stood in the house she had fled from. The open drawer, the empty space where the files had been, they told him everything he needed to know. His expression was unreadable, almost calm, as if this too had been part of the plan. But deep within, rage began to coil. Not the rage of a man betrayed, but the rage of someone whose perfect order had been disrupted. Samantha was never supposed to see that part of him. She was meant to complete it, to be the final piece in his design. He moved through the house methodically, the echo of his footsteps sharp against the marble floor. He found her bracelet near the study door, a small trace, a mistake. He picked it up and closed his hand over it, his pulse steady, his mind already reconstructing the path she might have taken. He didn't panic. He didn't shout. He simply knew. And when he finally walked out into the rain, it was with the quiet conviction of a predator who had already forgiven the prey for trying to escape. Samantha, meanwhile, found temporary refuge in an old motel by the highway. The neon sign outside flickered in and out of life, casting a broken glow across the ceiling. She lay on the bed, staring upward, the noise of the rain against the window merging with the hum of the fluorescent light. She wanted to disappear. To erase every trace of him. Yet, she couldn't bring herself to leave the only evidence of what he'd done, the folder now hidden in her bag. Inside were names, faces, locations, a network of victims, all connected by Nathan's false compassion, his perfect deceit. Some were women who had trusted him, others who had crossed his path briefly before vanishing. Each story ended the same way, silence. And now, she was holding the truth that could destroy him. But exposing him meant coming forward, reliving it, risking everything. Her thoughts spiraled between fury and exhaustion. How easy it would be to walk away, to vanish into another city, another name. But that would mean letting him continue. Letting him win. The image of his calm smile burned in her mind, that smile that once made her feel safe, now twisted into something monstrous. She could still smell the faint trace of his cologne in her hair, the ghost of his hand on her shoulder. Her body remembered him in ways her heart wished it didn't. That was the cruelest part. Betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical, embedded in her every breath. As dawn approached, she made a decision that felt less like courage and more like necessity. She gathered the documents, wrapped them in plastic, and began writing, not a confession, but a record. Something that would survive even if she didn't. She left copies in hidden places, a locker at the bus terminal, a mailed envelope addressed to no one. She didn't expect redemption. Only justice. Nathan's pursuit grew quieter but closer. He was no longer chasing her in the open, he was watching, waiting, letting fear corrode her from within. She could feel his presence even in empty rooms, the faint click of a camera shutter in the distance, the hum of a car engine idling too long outside. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the basement, the photographs, the way he had planned everything down to the last detail, even her. Weeks passed. The line between survival and obsession began to blur. Samantha became someone new, cautious, calculating, harder. The fear that once paralyzed her had evolved into something sharper, more dangerous. She started to trace his steps, to understand the system he had built. With each discovery, the anger that burned in her chest deepened into purpose. And Nathan, in turn, found himself unraveling. For all his control, for all his precision, he had underestimated the one variable he couldn't manipulate, her will. What had begun as a pursuit to reclaim order turned into something personal. The hunter and the hunted began to mirror each other, both consumed by the same need to end what they had started. By the time their paths crossed again, neither was the same. Samantha no longer looked like the woman who had once loved him, Nathan no longer resembled the man she had trusted. Their eyes carried the same exhaustion, the same fury, reflections of the same wound. In that final confrontation, words were useless. Every choice they had made, every betrayal, every scar, it all converged into silence. When it was over, the house stood empty once more. The walls still held the scent of rain, the echo of footsteps, the shadow of something that had been human once but had long since rotted into obsession. Samantha's notes, scattered across the floor, told the story of two people who had loved each other enough to destroy everything in their path. Somewhere beyond that ruin, the sun rose, indifferent, quiet, eternal. Samantha walked into the light with nothing left but the truth, and Nathan's ghost followed close behind, a reminder that some secrets never die, they only change hands. When the echoes of pursuit finally faded, what remained was silence, a silence too deep to be peace, too heavy to be relief. Samantha walked through the wreckage of everything she once believed in, carrying the truth like a wound that would never close. Nathan was gone, but his presence lingered in the spaces between her thoughts, in the shadows that stretched too long at dusk. Freedom, she realized, was not escape, it was endurance. It was the choice to keep breathing when every memory urged her to stop. The world outside had already moved on. The papers, the news, the whispers of scandal. To them, she was just another survivor, another headline fading into the next tragedy. But inside her, something irreversible had shifted. The love that once bound her had turned into a lesson written in scars. She understood now that monsters did not appear from the dark, they were built from tenderness, from the small permissions we give to cruelty when it hides behind affection. Every step forward was a quiet defiance. She left behind the house, the memories, the name. But Nathan's ghost followed, not as a haunting presence, but as a reminder, a reflection of what she had endured, and what she could become if she ever forgot. There were moments when anger still flickered, when she caught her own reflection and saw a glint of the same hunger for control, the same emptiness he had lived by. It terrified her, yet it also made her stronger. She had seen the worst of love, and survived it. In that survival lay something sacred, not forgiveness, not peace, but truth. A truth that whispered that the line between savior and destroyer, between devotion and obsession, was thinner than anyone dared to admit. Samantha carried that truth like a weapon now, hidden but sharp. And as she disappeared into the horizon, the world unaware of the storm she had weathered, there was a strange calm in her steps, not the calm of safety, but the calm of someone who had faced hell and chosen to keep walking.